Hi and welcome to the channel. My name is Nicole with morningchores.com, and today I'm going to demonstrate a couple of different ways that you can preserve garlic for long-term storage. We're filming this video towards the end of June, which means I'll be harvesting garlic out of my garden probably sometime in July. And as you can see from this bowl, I have quite a bit of garlic left over from last year's harvest. Now, some of the bulbs have gone bad, so I wanted to preserve this in a couple of different ways so that it will last even longer, and that's what I'm going to show you today. Garlic is a very valuable plant to have on your property. Not only is it easy to grow, but it's wonderful for flavoring food, it's highly nutritious, and it's also got a lot of medicinal value. I always like to use garlic when anyone has a cold or the flu, so it really is valuable. And if you want to learn how to grow it, how to harvest it, check those videos in the description box below. Now, my number one go-to for storing garlic is usually just after I cure it and dry it out, I just keep it in some type of woven basket. I like to use baskets because they have natural airflow, and it lasted almost a year. So now it's time to go to the next step. So I'm going to demonstrate a couple of different ways that we can preserve this, one with olive oil, as well as using the sun oven to dehydrate. So I'm going to go ahead and get my supplies and we'll get started. Our first step is to remove all the cloves and peel the skins away. Now that our garlic is completely peeled and washed, I'm ready to show you the first preservation method, and that is preserving your garlic cloves in olive oil. So in order to do this, all you need is a mason jar, a lid, olive oil, of course your cloves, and I'm actually going to use a weight to keep the cloves submerged in the olive oil, and I'll explain that later in the video. But the key to this method is you want to make sure that you are using clean equipment. You also want to make sure that your hands are washed, and you also want to make sure that when you do this method that you keep the cloves completely submerged in the olive oil, because there is a risk of botulism. I'll leave an article in the description box below, but as long as you follow the directions correctly and you store the garlic cloves correctly, then there shouldn't be any issues. The first step is to fill our mason jar with the cloves. Very simple. Now, I'm not going to fill my mason jar all the way to the top because I need room for the olive oil, and of course I need room for the weight. So I'm just putting the cloves up to that, and I'm not packing them in super tight, but I also don't want them super loose. And one way you can ensure that is to give it a little shake. You can also do this. And that just ensures that they've settled properly, and I can actually fit a few more in here. I have my olive oil in with my cloves, and as you can see, some of my cloves are trying to come up. They floated up to the top a little bit. And the key with this method is that the cloves need to be completely submerged in the olive oil. They cannot be exposed to oxygen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this fermentation weight. These I will link in the description box below, but they really come in handy because it helps keep whatever you're fermenting or preserving below the liquid so that you can just ensure that you're fermenting or preserving your food properly. And this again is going to prevent any bacteria to grow, which could potentially cause botulism. So all I'm going to do is just place this on top like this and just push it down just a little bit, and that will keep the cloves completely submerged. Next, we're going to place a mason jar lid on top, secure it tight, and that's it. The next method for preserving garlic for long-term storage that I'll be demonstrating today is with dehydration. and I will be dehydrating the garlic using the All-American Sun Oven. If you are new to the Sun Oven, I have a complete introduction video that I'll link in the description box below, where I go in a lot more detail on the basics of using the Sun Oven. But our Sun Oven is already preheating outside in the sun, so definitely check that video out if you're new to that. But you can also use this recipe with an electric dehydrator or with an oven dehydrator as well. So you can always copy it down and use it for those methods, but today I thought it'd be fun to show you on how to dehydrate with the Sun Oven. My garlic is already peeled, so the next step is to slice it in thin slices. You cannot dehydrate it as a whole clove like this, at least not with the Sun Oven. It's really ideal to slice it. So all I'm gonna do is I'm going to chop the ends off. So you see this brown spot here, I'm going to chop that off and discard that. And then from here, I'm literally just gonna make very thin slices. And then of course I'm going to discard the other end as well, but I want to use as much of that as I possibly can because we don't want to waste any food if possible. The thinner you slice it, the quicker it will dehydrate. So just keep that in mind as you're slicing. Of course, not every piece is going to be perfect, but I'm going to do the best I can. Now that I have my garlic sliced up and ready to go, it's time to prepare our trays. Now, when you buy a All-American Sun Oven, you can buy them to come with dehydration trays. So these came with the Sun Oven. I think I did have to pay a little extra to get this part, but you can look all that up on the website. But what's nice about them is they stack, so the bottom one is the biggest, and then it goes from medium to small. And what they recommend in the manual is that you line your trays with parchment paper, and I do find it's helpful to cut them to size. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you do want to line the trays with parchment paper, and then we'll place the garlic on top. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started on that so that we can get these in the Sun Oven and get these dehydrating. As I'm laying the garlic on the parchment paper, I want to put it as flat as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect, but doing one layer and not having the pieces overlap will just ensure that the garlic dehydrates more evenly. My first tray is done, and you want to make sure that you leave a space on the long side of each edge because we're going to need space to stack our next tray. And you don't want to smush the garlic. And once you get the second tray on there, I've noticed I have a little bit more space on this side, so I'm going to throw some more garlic in there. On the top rack, you can get away with putting the garlic or whatever it is you're dehydrating on a little thicker because this is the tray that's going to get the most UV rays. So the bottom tray is not going to get as much, so it's going to take longer to dehydrate, whereas this is going to dehydrate very quickly. Our trays are ready to place in the Sun Oven, and the trickiest part about this entire process is carrying these trays outside without spilling them. The first thing I do when I come out here and check is I always make sure that that dark circle is in the center of the light circle. That way I know the Sun Oven is perfectly lined up with the sun and I'm utilizing the most of the UV rays. I explain more of this on my introduction video. In order to dehydrate with the sun oven, this has to rest on top of the latches. You do not want to latch it shut because we are not cooking it, we're dehydrating. And this allows just enough airflow inside the sun oven. If it gets too hot in there, it'll burn it, so we definitely don't want to do that. So I'm going to come back here and check it in about 20 minutes. It's been about 20 minutes since I last came out here, and I'm just going to open this and feel the garlic with my finger. And it is starting to dry out. So I'm going to go ahead and close this and leave it go for about another 20 minutes and come back and check on it. The top rack of the garlic is done, and usually you can tell because it starts to turn brown, and it should be able to snap in half easily. It feels very similar to a potato chip or maybe a banana chip, but this is done, so I took it out, and we're gonna let the other two continue to dehydrate. Thank you for joining me in today's video. I hope you found it helpful and you learned something new. I would love to hear in the comments below, what is your experiences with dehydration? What do you like to dehydrate? Also, take the time to head over to morningchores.com. There is so much information over there about food preservation, about gardening, homesteading, animal husbandry, and much, much more. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you on the next one.